All right, first up on the docket today, the Oklahoma Reserve Sheriff's deputy who shot an unarmed suspect, Robert Bates, surrendered yesterday, and he's facing second-degree manslaughter charges. He's been released, that after posting a $25,000 bond. Bates said he meant to shoot his taser, but mistakenly used his gun instead during the incident. Bates responded to the scene of a sting operation involving guns and drugs. He was trying to help other officers who were arresting the suspect, and it raises a whole host of questions here, including why was a 73-year-old insurance executive involved in something like this in the first place? The department says he had 400 hours of training, but many question whether it's appropriate for a volunteer reserve deputy to get involved in dicey situations like this. All right, let's bring in our panel right now. Jim Kasuris, criminal defense attorney, Manhattan, sitting on the board of directors at the New York Civil Criminal Bar Association, frequently lecturing at New York Law School and the bar associations in Queens and New York City, and a visiting professor at the University of Birmingham in England. Doug Von Oist, founding partner of Carson Von Oist. He focuses on corporate misconduct and was selected by the Legal 500 as one of the most influential trial lawyers in the country. Mayo Bartlett, an attorney at the law offices of Mayo Bartlett PLLC and a former chief of the Bias Crimes Unit at the Westchester County DA's office. And Mark Furnish, a professor at Brooklyn Law, and he's argued before the U.S. Supreme Court. All right. First up, I saw the video. This clearly was a guy who's trying to sell guns here. The video gets it. Cars roll up here, and the guy knows that the jig's up, and he takes a run for it. They secure him. They put him on the ground. You had told me in your former life as DA, and as a journalist, I know if you're going to ride along, you're not allowed out of that car. Why exactly are senior citizens allowed to be packing heat and tasers and be involved in the commissions of arrests when not necessary? By the way, that was Jimmy Kasuris.
I don't know what's going on.
Tase him, first tase him, then answer. But can you explain that to me? A senior moment and deserving to be tased.
You know, I think I'm speaking for everybody. I've never heard of anything like this before in my life. I mean, I don't know where this came from. I don't know the program. I don't think I've ever heard. This is one of the best civil suits I think I've ever heard, if the damages are right. I mean, not the damages, but...
And the guy was killed, and the guy died, and he asked, why was I shot? Part of it is also Mayo. The cops were yelling, well, why the bleep did you run and everything else? He died in the OR, so every second would have counted and everything else. You see him pinned down on the ground. But, I'm sorry, what if the guy had been shot in trying to secure an arrest? Do we let donors be involved in the commissions of arrests, let alone carrying firearms? And why would even if you use the right thing, who wants this guy tasing people?
Well, and also you have to look at the fact that this gentleman's 73 years old. So not only do you have, matter of fact, judges in New York State would have to retire, and that's to be a judge. That's not to chase someone down with a taser or a handgun.
I don't know too many patrolmen in the 70s, do you?
Very few, if any, that even stay on the force past 50, unless they're in an administrative capacity.
Would you rather have George Zimmerman in there? I mean, a 73-year-old man presumably has better judgment than a cop wannabe like 20-year-old. Well, why is it his fault? You know, what Doug said, here's what the civil suit is one thing. The civil suit is one thing, but this man has been charged with manslaughter. This is not his fault. It's the fault of the people who put him in that position. This is a common practice across the country. You just
finished saying you'd rather have this guy than Zimmerman.
Of course I would, because a 73-year-old has better judgment and is less violent than a 25-year-old cop.
Hold on a second, Mark. And you're an Islander fan here, so even tonight I'll watch
that calls my judgment.
Okay, yeah, me as well. We're gluttons. But if he has such great judgment, who can't tell the difference between a taser and a gun? And when he pulls the trigger and kills him?
It's a stressful thing. It's a takedown. People can make mistakes.
He's not taking that. They already pinned him down.
I'm not defending his behavior, but he was put in that position by police department policy. It's not his fault.
Richard, you know what happens
We're acting as though we have a guy who's walking around that can't breathe and can't...
Look at Rocky Balboa.
The bigger issue...
I mean, he was perfectly good in his old age.
Is, again, if you're going to put him in that position, how on earth does he have things lined up on his waist that when he reaches it for it, it's the wrong thing? I mean,
that's why you have professionals. Being a police officer is not an amateur endeavor. You have somebody who's trained, someone who's going to not make the mistake between a taser and a handgun. But then other things happen in this case that are even more troubling than the shot. What's more troubling is that after he shoots, he immediately says, "Oh, I'm sorry." So that seemed to me, at least, it seemed to be sincere.
The guy's on the ground going,
Except after that, the man's on the ground, he's subdued. You
He's
have an
shot.
officer shot, and you have an officer kneeling on his head again. So we're going right back to what happened with Mr. Garner.
But those are the regular cops.
Well, but
doing
it doesn't really make a difference. I'm looking at the department as a whole. The fact that that department was reckless and negligent and put this guy at risk as well as the public at risk by having him there.
That's after he was shot on the ground and they're cursing at him
Do you
that he
think
shouldn't have
deserves
ran.
to be prosecuted for manslaughter?
Well, Rich, the guy also
Don't
says,
we
"I
have
can't
cause and
breathe."
effect, Mark, where if he didn't shoot him, he'd have been arrested in the back of the squad car and it would have been prosecuted for selling drugs, selling guns, whatever he did. I'm not saying he's an angel, but he didn't deserve to die.
No, I get that. But this is apparently a very common practice across the country because people can't afford to pay
I got to
the
get to
police.
this piece of video, and I got to get your take on it, Jimmy. This is an amazing video. All right,
can't
I
wait
want to go
for
to
this.
Arizona. This is a dash cam video you're about to see. It's got a police car. This is not an accident. And this isn't sped up by us. He's intentionally hitting. Look for that guy. Now, the guy had a rifle which he had fired in the air. And make no mistake, this is definitely not an angel. Department said the cops did
Well,
the
he was on
right
a
thing
crime spree the
because
whole
the
day.
suspect had already broken into a church, lit the church on fire, invaded somebody's home, stole a car, stole a gun from Walmart that he had there. He had a long rap sheet, and he was headed towards a crowded area. I get that. But my question is, we get into guys like shooting guns and stuff. This guy, I mean, look at the cop. He pinned it, and he put him over, and the guy lived. Jimmy,
It's one way
Well,
to take them out.
Yes, it is.
And here's the explanation. And the funny thing is, it's not a funny thing. He's not being charged. There's a decision to
this
not charge
happened
him.
beginning of the year. The video just coming out now, but he's not
so
charged,
let's,
just like Jimmy said.
let's revisit at some point what the effect of having these things on video has on life for us these days. What I don't understand, he's clearly not an angel. And to add to that synopsis, he also apparently was told several times to drop the gun, and he shot the rifle in the air. I guess my question is, why not, as you're coming up to him, stop the vehicle, open the door, get behind the vehicle, order him to drop the gun?
You brought me, thank you, to the perfect
Was there an
open-ended question.
alternative
Out
to
of
it?
all these situations, what's the one commonality? Judgment, right? Now, Doug, my question is, you've been on both sides of this, just like you guys have, okay? Prosecutors, you've worked with cops, and you've also been on the other side as criminal defense attorneys, right? Are we expecting too much? I mean, we gave the particulars. This guy was on a spree, okay? Had a loaded gun that he already fired in the air. Are we saying, well, you know what, he should have been driving 30 miles slower maybe? He didn't need to put him literally over the hood and over two guys' yards?
You mean to speed up like that?
How old was the driver?
What should our expectation be? Because that's the big debate going on in the country right now of cops in high adrenaline, real-time situations where you do say to yourself, would I have really pinned my car to try and to do that, you know?
Well, the expectation is that there's a set rule that they're following. That's the thing that we're talking about judgment. You hope that a police officer, for the first time that he's thinking about this, isn't in the car when he's behind the wheel. If there's somebody in a neighborhood, a crowded neighborhood with a gun, there must be a procedure for taking care of that, whether it's calling for backup, whether it's tasering the guy. I don't know what they have it there. But you hope it's not a guy saying, hey, maybe the best thing to do is floor it and take the guy out and go through somebody's yard. Because this is, I mean, it's semi-comical because it doesn't even look real. But if there was a small child in that yard, this wouldn't be funny at all.
Yeah, but presumably he saw, look, the optics of this look terrible, but the man was mentally disturbed. He was on a crime spree. As you pointed out, he was told to drop the gun. He was firing the weapons in the air. Why risk having the cops get out of the car and that this man will shoot them?
But Richard, you're looking, the officer put himself in danger by slamming into this concrete fixture there. He could have killed anybody else who was there, could have easily killed this guy. If any civilian did the exact same thing, that person's getting charged, and they're going to tell you, you cannot take the law into your own hands. You can't use deadly force on someone who at the moment really wasn't. He's walking away. He's not pointing that gun at anybody. And what happens is we have to know,
plant and other places.
I know that you can find some justification in this, but let's put it this way, and I say you, not me. But at the end of the day, when you look at this case, this guy has to be reasonable. You expect police to have more judgment than the average citizen.
I'm going to play devil's advocate, and I'm up against a break. You talk to your friends who are on the force still, they say, Mayo, for crying out loud, you're creating an impossible standard for us. And they'll give you an example. Look what happened at the club where the NBA player got stabbed. Yeah. You got now a former player who wouldn't allow them to set a crime scene, who's suing the police department for abuse because he broke his ankles because he's getting out of the way. Cops are starting to say, no matter what I do, I can't win. I happen to agree with you on this stuff, but that's the sentiment from law enforcement.
That's not a fair analysis, because what happens is it's a cop-out, basically, no pun intended. And what it is saying that if you criticize me on anything, then you're criticizing me on everything. And that's not the case. And that's not to say people aren't thankful for law enforcement officials who take their job seriously and do a great job. What we're saying is that those who don't, whether it's intentional, reckless, or they had a lapse of judgment, should be held to be accountable. That's all people are saying. No one is saying that you're against police altogether.
And that's a good note to go out on a break on. We come back here. We got a verdict today in Massachusetts. Former New England Patriot Aaron Hernandez facing life now in prison, that after being found guilty of first-degree murder. Why that verdict was a surprise to some people, we'll get into that on the other side.